Hey, it's the Chief Body with Board Games. We're looking at Waterloo 1815 from Trafalgar Editions, Games and Books. They're out of Spain. I did their Trafalgar game as well. And someone usually asks, yes, there is a company that actually you can buy these from in the U.S. I can't remember its name, and I'll try to remember to put it down in the comments section or description. So, but what is it? It's the Battle of Waterloo. This is the one where the British are fighting the French and the Prussians come in and assist. And historically, Napoleon doesn't do well at all. So, I am not a huge Napoleonics fan. I don't own too many games of it. The ones I do own are mostly in the seafaring era. These are line formations or column. You can break into square, which is what they use to defend against cavalry charges. This is a block game, but it's not like a square block where you're taking step losses and rotating and it's all about fog of war. This is a block war that shows on one side there's a sticker that shows generally a line formation or an unlimbered deal for cavalry, and on the flip side of that block they're in column or limbered formation. And the map has no hexagons on it or zones or anything. It's a beautiful, gorgeous open map. There is no stacking. As you're moving your units around, if they're in column formation, their front is facing this way and they're a little quicker to move. And if they're in line formation this way, they are much more arrayed for battle, but they don't move as well. Perfect. That part is great, simple, and elegant. We'll go in and we'll take a look at it right now.
All right, opening up. I'm only using half the map, and we'll talk basically about just the scenario one, which is an introductory scenario with the French and the Prussians. So I'll break down how a turn or a round goes pretty soon. I'll get the right nomenclature, but I wanted to show a little closer up how beautiful the map is and how you can see the different elevations. I'm going to zoom in just a tad so you can see we've got dual elevations. You've got a flat plain rolling into a hill, rolling into more of a crested hill. You can see the woods are beautifully displayed, villages, and then your roads coming in, and then something that's a little hard to tell, smaller stream, bigger river. You can generally ford a stream. You cannot ford a river unless you're at a bridge point. But there are little things you notice, bridges with littler streams as well. The setup for this particular one, I'm not following that currently. The setup is that the French are coming in a little further over here. The Prussians do come in off of where you see these arrows are. But what I wanted to show you real quick is the counters. And you can see the little triangle red pieces here. On the flip side, it's simply blue, but they're a little misaligned. Sorry, I'm knocking things around. Those are for your UMs, your unit movement. Let me pull that up. So this is one full unit movement. I cannot hold it with my big fingers. And there's a little dotted line halfway through that shows you half of a UM. Let me cut away, and I'm going to zoom in a little tighter on the units so you can see there's two sides to each one of these blocks. All right, we're in on these two French units here. So first I want to show you, these are the units in line formation. You can see the unit they're in, the commander, and then their morale point. And I'm sorry, my focus is a little off. It's better if I don't even pick these fellas up. It's also key to show that when you have a unit, if it takes a step reduction, I was very used to a step reduction usually being more of a square, almost starburst shaped block. And when I took a step reduction, I would rotate the block around to show how the block weakens. In this game, you're going to actually take one of these. You can see the flip side, if I can hold on to it for the Prussians here. In this game, you're going to have these little step reductions that would go on like so. If I can get it on with my big fingers, and they'll reduce your morale by that amount. So that'll be your marker. I'm going to get that out of the way because with my big fingers, whoop, these are extremely fiddly. So let me flip it over and show you the other side. So this would be as if they were in column march. You obviously have, and I'll get into it with combat, but when you're in line, you're more dressed out to face the enemy. You've got all your rifles to bear, but it's a lot harder to maneuver. When you are in your column march, this is how you're going to be marching on road and everything else. However, you don't want to get caught by another unit striking you with their line, or maybe even cavalry coming in when you're in this formation. And the way they display the square is literally with a different counter that you can pop in, shows you going to the square, which is extremely effective against cavalry. All right, I've got cavalry and artillery. I pre-set up and flipped their pieces, two different pieces, but so you can see the difference. So here we have cavalry that is in column march. Here we're in line. Here we have artillery that is limbered or set up to be kind of moved on a road. And here they are unlimbered and ready for action. All right, what I've got displayed here are the fronts of each of your units. So here's an infantry unit where they're in a line, and you can see how effective a unit in line formation is. They're much better at firing. Here they're in column formation, and that literally the front two guys would be marching in column. Artillery unit, unlimbered, can fire, but they cannot move. Here the artillery unit's limbered, and they would be able to move right down this road. And you can see their front, cavalry in column, cavalry in line. Depending on which units you have, these are French units, so I've grabbed a French Army card. I'm going to set this down so I'm not moving around, and I think you'll be able to see it all right. So first you can see the M up top, that's morale, and you can see what the unit's standard number would be, and then if it's taken a step loss, you can see the backslash and what its morale factor is. Next is what formation they're in, so you can see the line formation, then you can see the column, then the square, all right, then it repeats again with this unit. We'll stay up here. You have your musketry, so you can see how musketry after the backslash is affected by whether or not there's been a step loss. And if you see the parentheses here, I'm going to move my finger because I am shaking way more than I should. The parentheses are if the units are in square, and that would be their musketry rating against cavalry. You can see actually how very, very good that is. Sliding over is their combat modifier. Again, depending on the type of unit and the type of formation they can be in. Some of them, most of them are positives, but sometimes they can even get into negatives. I did fail to point out one formation, and that cavalry units can have the charge token. If they were to attack, let me grab. So if this unit were to charge, let's just pretend, well, heck, they come across the bridges, whatever. They can't attack in a fashion that would bring them around or any kind of, circular route. It's got to be in a straight line. So if they were going to charge, you would just, I'm kind of off camera. If they were going to charge, they got to go in a straight line right at the unit. But that's the one formation, sorry, I hadn't shown. All right, I've got a visual display of the unit movement, the UM markers, next to the different types of units. I wanted to show you, I'm going to come over that one all the way in the back is headquarters. All right, so you got foot units can move 2 UMs, horse or mounted units can move 4, and headquarters, there's also runners, I believe, if I'm remembering that right, can move 6. Now you're saying, what about that little artillery unit up top? Well, this artillery unit in particular is a foot artillery unit, so it would be under the exact same UM rules as the infantry that's in column there. Here's one thing that's what I think's really nice about this map. There are no hexes. I think the map is just beautiful. So part of your whole movement issue is you don't have the hexes to organize your movement, so you're using these UMs, these unit markers. Now you can go in a straight line, but you can also adjust each marker up to a 45-degree angle. And the next one can be a 45-degree angle, and so on. So you can control and swing your movement. The other thing that's really nice about this, let me clear this off. So first of all, if this unit moved, he would simply do his 2 unit markers and then come up, sorry, I'm pushing it around. He would come up flush as I shove it even more. That's the one thing I don't like about the unit markers, is he's now flush, and you can see where he is in position, and the next unit markers, if I can get my finger on camera, would be up in front of him. The point also being that if he was in a line formation instead of a column formation, you can already see how it's going to decrease his movement. Instead of being further along, he's going to be just here, and he's losing a big part of the length of his block. Same thing happens for the cavalry. Don't worry about the HQs. They're always considered mounted. They're light, and they're very, very fast. But again, all of these can adjust, up to 45-degree angles. So you can really have a lot of movement in the angle that you wish to take. This gives it a lot of freedom and leeway. And by the way, if a unit, in this case, let's say a Prussian unit was attacked and forced to retreat, let me move it up a little bit, they have to retreat backwards at least 1 UM. So he would have to retreat back in that same, and I'm going off camera, but you can see how these UMs are used in effect. Sorry, I forgot to say, if you have a square, the square can only move half a UM. Any unit can make a 90-degree turn, but it then moves up to only half of its movement allowance. And you can also basically do an orderly retreat, move in the opposite direction. But when you do so, you also only get half of your movement allowance. You will occasionally have a unit that will pivot completely around 180 degrees. And if so, it's considered that they have used all of their movement allowance. I'm saying movement allowance a lot. Sorry, that's the phrasing. You can always move through friendly units, but what you will run into with the order of battle is you may be coming up on another unit, an enemy unit, and if there's not a big enough gap for your Prussian unit to move through that gap, their movement is blocked. And if you're on a road or a path, you do get to add 1 extra UM to your movement allowance. There is no stacking in this game. There's no hexes. You can't stack multiple units on top of each other. They take up a physical space, and that space is their own. That's really one of the nice things about this type of block game, when they're already kind of set up for those line formations. Line of sight, I'm not going to get into all the particulars. You can get lost in the minutia. If you've played any war games, the line of sight is the same. All right, I've just set up a little combat here between the French and the Prussians. So just so you're seeing, we do have an artillery unit here. It's unlimbered, it's ready to go. It can fire in an arc for both of these Prussian units, which are in line formation. This Russian infantry unit's also in line formation. You can see that we've got a commander, a HQ, back over here. I'm going to pick that up, and if you can see, and you may not be able to, it's below, and he's a 9. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. You can see also the Prussians have their own artillery unit. So the purpose of the morale from an HQ being attached in the first place is you can see the Prussians is 7, HQ's a 9. This unit can use the attached HQ number, the 9, instead of the 7. Now if these units were attached to each other, they could both be using that HQ. The HQ will also add a +1 bonus in combat. Now, if you have Napoleon or Wellington or Blucher, and I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, you get a +2. So let me go back in unattached just to show. So this would be if they were literally connected to each other, and there's some things in combat you're going to be able to do there as well. But let me go ahead and move them back. So the key would also be, let me grab one of these unit markers. Okay, you can see he's within 1 UM. In this case, he wouldn't get to use HQ's 9, but he would get a +1. I keep saying he, it's a large, big unit. They would turn from a 7 to an 8 in their morale. Now, if we're following the sequence of play, which is what we are, and I'm going to walk you through it, there would be a rally phase if any of these units were in any kind of disorganized state. They're not. The very next phase would be artillery defensive fire phase. So I'm going to show that the Prussians are marching up on the French. By the way, this artillery unit is on a 1 elevation higher. The line infantry unit is not. So with the Prussians being the attackers, the defensive artillery, they can decide, do they want to use that? Now, the French, yes, they do. So do they have line of sight? Clearly. The question is, I've already stated, or I would have stated to the individual that my attack is going to be by these units here, and that my artillery will be involved as well, which means they're going to get if I want, which I will, I'm going to do a preparatory attack with my artillery. But let me set this down, and I may need to pan out. Hold on. All right, you can see it's a fire and combat table. So the main part is going to be here, but you'll see there's a fire procedure, and then I'll slide it up. You can just kind of see there's a combat procedure. By the way, this gave me some confusion, so I'm going to walk through it here real quick. Fire procedure is when the units are just going to be sitting there firing off at each other. Musketry fire, canister fire that's getting ready to come from this artillery unit. So using the table for the fire procedure, I will consult this part of the chart. I'm going to note that it's an artillery unit, so I'm looking at artillery, and it's firing against a unit that's in a line. So if my Prussian unit was in column or in square, the modifier actually goes up, and they'll get a little bonus to the 1 die 6. However, they're in line, no bonus. Let me just look and make sure that's correct. It's a 0. I would then come down and check the power rating of the unit. I believe that, without moving all this, I believe that French unit was a 3, which is actually going to -1 off of the die roll. So I would roll 1, and I would get no effect or 0, and the preparatory fire just didn't do anything. But let's assume it had been up a little bit higher and we'd had a morale check. Now again, we're not paying attention to any of this shaded deal when it comes to the fire. Morale check's real easy. You're going to take 2 dice. You're going to roll the 2 dice, and you're just going to compare to the morale rating. Now let's say the fire was against the unit that had the HQ attached to it. So instead of them having that 7 morale, they had a 9 morale. This would have been very, very bad, because you've got to roll below. By the way, when you do morale checks, it's 2 dice. And you've got to be the number or below. So I needed a 9 or less, clearly ended up with 11, and they would have had a break in morale. And then there's a process that you can go through as far as the morale. All right, so in a failed morale check, let me pull this off for a second. So again, we had, this is the cool little marker. Let's just see if I can get it to balance on there. Perfect. All right, so you can see he's fired. Now, quite honestly, I'm not sure if I wouldn't have fired at those if I was the artillery guy. But this is the more devastating unit that's coming in. Maybe they were under orders. So beautiful marker, beautiful map. Fires, hits them hard. And they fail their morale check. So you're saying, well, what happens on the morale check? Well, there's a series of steps that flow in. They've got another lovely chart. Let me grab that that walks you through that. The rules call it shaken. Here it's stunned. Same thing, because the rules of the unit moves half its movement allowance. It cannot change formation, conduct fire, or attack. Clearly, that would be a major problem for this unit. Sorry, I'm moving this unit around. He cannot conduct his attack now that he's been stunned or shaken. The other thing you'll see on here, I can keep it in, is the counter has a little +1, and that means that if they're attacked, the attacker actually gets a +1 bonus when they come in. Now, if they were to get hit again, let's say there was a line of artillery firing at them or something else happens in the future and they're not able to rally and get that marker off, you can see they'll move to disorganized, and they got that +2. And then you can see they can move to routed, and they'll move to +3, and things get progressively worse as you move along. So you definitely want to try to rally units when they get these markers placed on them. You can see the effect of that canister shot. It just stunned that unit, and now that unit can't attack, and their movement is halved. So that, and I love the visual appeal. I like having the markers. Let me show you again. If they'd been shooting further away, you can see how far artillery can reach out. They can shoot shells further out, but this clearly is the canister shot. All right, then I would move over to the attacker and their artillery prep phase. So it literally would switch around. We would go through the exact same process again. Let me show you this chart. So you can see here, let me set it down so I can show you. I would come in and say, okay, artillery's firing. He's firing at a line unit. The French unit's in line formation. He's going to get 0 bonus on that modifier. Let me move and look. I can't remember his strength. His strength is a 6. Let me move this chart down a little bit more. So that's his power ranking is a 6. I slide across, boom. All right, 6 gives me a +1. And if you look down, first, British infantry is very tough, but also canister is going to give me another +1. So I have +2 when I come over. If I can pick this out without moving all my guys over. I have +2 when I come over and roll a simple dice, 6-sided die. I will roll it. We're going to see what we get. So I got a +2. Sweet. Roll the 6. That would give me the 8, and I would come in and you would see a step loss. Now again, the shaded portion, it is not in play. We're simply doing the fire procedures, not the combat procedure. Combat procedure, think of as melee, closing in and using the bayonet. It's like a full-out assault. So we'll get to that in a second. All right, so we would have an 8. It's a 1 step loss. So I can't see my counter. There it is, I think. Yep. All right. So we would come in with our step loss counter. Let me go ahead and pull this cool thing off. All right. He would take his step loss, if I can get it on there without shaking everything around. All right. Let's pretend that this unit did not receive all the damage that it did and that it had the marker on it. I haven't put the marker on it anyway. They can move. This unit can move in line formation up to 2 UMs. Clearly, it can get into range. By the way, range of musketry fire is half a UM. So right now, there couldn't be any musketry fire between these units. Artillery, yes. Musketry, no. But you can clearly see he's going to be, again, he can move 2 UMs. So he would move up in his movement. Let's just pretend that this unit came in and was able to also... You can rotate 45 degrees, and that may have been more than allowable. Well, let's keep them from touching. We'll just say they come up and attack the artillery. There are some bonuses you get when you've got units that are basically shoulder to shoulder. When you go to roll on, I'll explain it. When you go to roll on the combat modifier, or the combat chart, if they're connected, I forget what they use for the exact term, proportional maybe. If they're connected, you actually will add their 2 morale ratings together, which really pumps up your result. So you generally want to do it. It also keeps other units from getting through your line. Again, the beauty of this map and these units, there is no stacking. what you see is what you get. So this is the unit in line formation, and there literally is, the gap you see is a gap that would be open in the field of combat. So if they sealed it and were connected, it's literally a shoulder to shoulder, two units marching toward you with all the impact that that would bring to it. But sorry, I'm going to digress and we're going to get long. I was going to try to keep this short. So again, the units have moved within half a UM. Once they're in half a UM, now you can have musketry fire. Now there's two things going on here. You can just stand and bang away at each other with musketry, with the defender getting to fire first. And I'm not going to go through everything on this chart again. I think I've kind of showed it to you, although I will cover the shaded area. I'll talk about it quickly. If you just bang out with each other on musketry fire, you're just literally, you're shooting, and it's a process that's very similar to what I showed you for how the artillery fire works. Musketry fire, artillery fire. However, if this unit closed and assaulted or did melee combat, we now are using what's called this combat modifier chart on here. So it's a line formation, attacking a line formation. You can see the bonus is 0. You can see what it would be, a +1 if they were in column, and it would be a +1 or a +2 if they were in square. Square is obviously, square is obviously great against our cavalry. All right, so if they were in line, you're going to take your modifiers now. You're going to roll under this combat procedure. You can see it's a 1d6. Add in or subtract any modifiers. You then consult the table. Not only do you do the standard morale check or step losses, but now you're also looking at the shaded area. So let's say I'd gotten a 5. There would be a morale check. So again, the unit's morale is down by 1. It's only 6 instead of a 7. You would do the morale check, roll 2 dice, add in whatever step morale issue they would be at if they failed. And then what we're looking at, 5. So if in combat and failed, retreats shaken. So it would get the, and you can see it goes shaken, disorganized, and it steps all the way down to routed. So it can get one of those, once it's in close assault or melee combat, it can get one of those, well, it can get disorganized or routed markers put on it right away, and it's going to retreat. The other thing is retreats like that will have, due to combat, will affect units next to them as well. By the way, you know the artillery would be freaking out right now. So that's when you're going to come in and just simply affect, and they retreat 1 UM back. And then the unit that is attacking has the option of moving 1 UM or less and basically closing in again. However, they won't do another attack. They're just set if they wanted to move on it again, keep the pressure on it. If there were cavalry involved, we would also have then done the cavalry combat phase. And once the attacker had done all his or her different attacks across the board, it would be over. Their turn would be over, and then the players' roles are then reversed.
All right, we're back. I've got some coffee hidden behind here. Hello, a little bit of Java. All right, so we're going to start off with a couple things real quick I want to show. Stickers. You will be putting stickers or tags or whatever they call them, and little tiny ones for the HQ and the cavalry, and medium-sized, or HQ and the artillery, medium-sized little stickers for the cavalry, and a little bit bigger ones, but still kind of small for the line infantry. And you're going to be doing them a lot. I would put on music and just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do all the French infantry. And I clipped my nails real close, and it was hard to get them under there. So these are just my personal things. If you do not like putting stickers on blocks, who doesn't like doing that? Actually, I don't mind it, but there was a lot, and you got to do them double-sided so that you have the same unit, which is, you can tell who they are here. You pay attention, though. Don't get sloppy, all right? Because you're going to put the sticker on the one block, and I'm a little OCD. I kind of like to get it lined up on there. And you don't want to take it off if you get it wrong because it'll mess it up. I did that once or twice and I had to get some glue. Hello. And then the flip side, you're going to, if you had it in line that you were putting on, you want to get the right unit in column. You got to do this. So, I mean, to give you an example, we got a blank here. So they're cut, but sometimes they're a little hard to get your nail under and to get it off of there. So there, I'm trying to do it and I can't get it. And then you got to separate it. And then there were some, and I give them credit for this, there were some stickers that, it was like 4 or 5 of them that didn't have the proper printing on it. So they sent some paper replacements. So you had to identify those, clip those off, trim them up real nice, get the glue on those because clearly there's no sticker, and then get those stickered on there. That's fine. I would rather have a correct unit and do the extra work, and it wasn't even that hard. But if you're anti-sticker, this may not be the game for you. Or search for it online from someone that said, hey, loved playing 1815, but I got a brand new Napoleonic that I'm playing, and I'm selling this, and by the way, they're all stickered. I did that with Command and Colors. Thank you. Thank you for the BGG user that let me buy those after they were stickered. I don't know if I would have had the patience. So, stickers, all right, for the Prussians, the Brits, and the French. Be ready for that. The rule book lays everything out really like, you know, I mean, you get your order of battle, and then we're going to move into what this unit does, what this cavalry does. Here's how movement works. Here's how combat works when they rout. Very linear. And that's fine. That, to me, is kind of more of the older system of laying out a rule set. Nothing wrong with it at all. Very easy to resource. I call it the 2.5.6, where you can be reading in Rule 8 and say, well, as retreats are covered, you actually want to go look at 14.9, and you can go read more on retreats. So it's very easy to resource and look at. Now, these were translated, and Paul, I'm going to say your name wrong again, but Paul Combin? Sorry, Paul. You even told me how to do that. I don't think I butchered your name when I was talking Trafalgar. So, translation's great. The rules format for me is it's a little harder to learn rules that are formatted in that way. I like the new, I'm going to call it the new style of rules, the Academy Games style of rules. I just had a live interview with Eric Lee Smith, who talked about his game, Battle Hymn Volume 1. Gettysburg and Pea Ridge has where it teaches you just a little bit. So in 5 minutes, you're up and you're doing a little scenario that's all about how I move my unit. So I would learn how to move, and that's not quite how these are set up. But I would learn, hey, if I'm in column formation, I'm moving down a road, I get this little bonus here, but if I want to flip and move it out into line, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z. And then because it was translated, my understanding is that the Spanish version, this game is from Spain, it's got a color manual and everything. That's great. This is more of a straight-laced, I mean, you can see it's got plenty of pictures, but it's not color. I have been spoiled. I'm spoiled. I love a color rule set with tons of breakouts, with a big splash page that's showing me the map and all the pieces and the charts and how they work. And then when I get to movement, it's showing me little breakout pictures of, see this unit? We were just talking about it. Now here it is moving, and there's little lines moving it. And the UM markers would be down on the map. I dig it. And boy, I think I almost need it as I get older. So it took me a while to kind of work through this. I read through it, and then I played through it, and then I started playing against, and I did a whole lot of solitaire play, playing both sides and trying to make sure I've got things right. And I got a little hung up even on the fire chart. There's plenty of charts, and the charts are helpful. They're not double-sided. That's fine. They're single-sided. But on the fire and combat table, they have a fire procedure, which is all about when their musketry fire or artillery fire is just banging away at each other. But then you have the combat procedure, and combat procedure is this separate little table, and that's when they're closing in and doing bayonet. The rules are real clear that the combat procedure uses the shaded area and the fire procedure doesn't. But I can tell you, when I was kind of working through the rules, I kept tripping myself up on is that, I mean, and the other side is even called combat fire modifiers. So I'd be like, well, am I using the combat modifier or the fire modifier? Well, it's real easy. If I'm doing the fire procedure where you're ignoring the shaded areas, I'm just using the fire modifiers. All right. But I got a little turned around in there. So that's these are going to be my only negative tidbits if you don't like stickering, and the rules format. Again, a perfectly fine format. This is kind of the format I'm familiar with from even the 80s. The new format, color, splash page, tons and tons of pictures and walkthrough in an order that kind of lets you kind of step along and bring up the complexity as you go is what I like. So, what do I think of the game? Beautiful, elegant game. And this is coming from a guy that is not into Napoleonics. And my tactical or combat games that I usually play are World War II tactical. What I loved about this is the map and how I'm able to look at the map. The units are the size of your block. So if you're connecting them, you're getting a bonus for that. If the HQ is connected or joined to a unit, you're getting their benefit of their morale. If they're within 1 UM of another unit, they're getting a +1 to their morale. Totally makes sense, the sphere of control. I love all that. It lays out, and it really kind of opens up visually so that you feel like you're up above the action. And how am I going to move this unit? Moving into square. I didn't show it in my close-up, but you literally just put the line on top of that square yellow marker, and they're in square formation. The idea that you can then run your cavalry in before a line of infantry attacks for the safety, and then you can run them back out, but the other unit might try to damage your guns. All of that is thematic and simulation and beautiful. So I can't compare this against other Waterloo games because I haven't played other Waterloo games. Wow, I better quit saying other. I read on it with the Sharp series of books, and that's really that. And then again, the sailing side of things, but not on Waterloo. But on Waterloo, that was my knowledge. Was the Sharp series of books on this style of combat. So I can't compare it against others, but again, my strength is the aesthetics of the map, the scenarios that are attached. They've got the Prussian, I kind of do a made-up Prussian little scenario in there, but they've got the Prussian scenario card, which I believe I've showed. They've got other scenarios you can fight, the larger battle in scope, and again, for me, it's just the fact that I'm not doing any mental gymnastics with, a hex and how many hexes can this unit move. No, it's the UMs, infantry moving 2, and I can move them at a 45-degree angle, so I can literally see how that unit's going to move. And then the firing phases and combat, once I got it sorted out, it's really simple. You're talking about a 1d6. Add in your modifiers, make sure you got them right, follow through your procedures on the defensive and the preparatory fire, and then your musketry, or are we moving into melee combat? It's resolved. Work your effects, do any of your morale that's been busted, put the markers on, go to the next one, do it again. So it's got a nice free flow that I enjoy. And I think that's about it. Chief, bonding with board games.